Por Ekoradio, otra forma de hacer radio. Ey, Ekoradio con K. Ekoradio.com, otra forma de hacer radio. Síguenos en nuestras redes sociales, en Twitter e Instagram como @Ekoradio y en Facebook como Ekoradio. Ekoradio, otra forma de hacer radio. El mundo entero hace eco en ekoradio.com, otra forma de hacer radio. Estás escuchando ekoradio.com, la vitrina del talento latino.
Entras.
Welcome today here in ekoradio. We have this second broadcast with Dr. Gamal and alternative holistic medicine. So please welcome, Doctor. How are you? How are you today?
Oh, hi, ekoradio. Thank you very much for having me here today. And this is our second time, and I'm very happy and I'm very excited to keep sharing all the knowledge and wisdom of ancient Egyptians. So thank you so much.
So for today we have a special program. I'm sure that many people are interested in this topic. For today we are going to talk about ancient Egyptian cosmology. So our first question for you, Dr. Gamal, is what was the concept of death in the ancient Egypt?
Yes, so today we're going to talk about different topics related to the ancient Egyptian cosmology, and particularly their beliefs of what was happening or what used to happen after death. We will be also talking about the waning of the heart process, and also the different elements and the most important elements that compose the soul. In addition, we will be also speaking about astral travels and different ways of seeing how the spirit or the soul used to make spiritual journeys. And everything is going to be focused in the way that ancient Egyptians used to think about life and life after death. So regarding your first question and topic, to the ancient Egyptians, death was not the end of life, but only the beginning of the next phase in an individual's eternal journey. So it was said that after death, the individual will be continuing living, but in a different existence or in a different plane of existence. According to ancient Egyptians, death was a simple transition to another phase of one's eternal existence. So life, or whatever you call it, may continue or could continue after death. And many things happen after that. And a few things needed to happen before this process. So there was an strict preparation of the soul and the physical body for doing so. The word used for them for death, known as maut, refers to rebirth. So it is an important concept to acknowledge. So death was not the end of our existences according to ancient Egyptians. The soul or the spirit of the person will continue into a new journey in a different plane of existence. Once the soul had successfully passed through judgment by the god Osiris, which was one of the most important gods and deities in ancient Egypt, and which we'll be talking about in our next program, it went on the eternal paradise, the fields of reeds. So this is the paradise for ancient Egyptians, the so-called field of reeds. And before reaching that place of everlasting peace, you needed to go through a judgment hall and a judgment process in which Osiris and other gods and goddesses were the witnesses of this verdict. The death were buried with their possessions in magnificent tombs and with elaborate rituals, because the soul will live forever once it has passed through that source and this judgment. So, talking about this, I think it is important to talk about the mummification process. So, I don't know if you have any questions regarding the mummification process. So,
Yes. What was the purpose of the mummification?
The purpose of the mummification was actually to preserve the physical body, or jas, which actually it was needed in the afterlife as well. So the physical body was like a vessel, and that contained many elements, or many energetic or spiritual elements. Yes. So it was important to prepare the body for this journey. So during the process, the first step was the purification of the physical body. So before the embalming process can begin, the body was washed with water from the Nile and palm wine. Then there was the process of the removal of internal organs. So a small incision is made in the left side of the body, and the liver, the lung, the intestines, and the stomach were removed. They are then washed and packed in natron. Natron is a type of salt which they use to preserve the different organs of the body. The heart was the only organ left in the physical body, because it has an important role in the process of the death and after crossing the death's door. And it was also believed that the heart was left in the body, as it is believed to be the center of the intelligence and will be needed in the afterlife. So we'll be talking about the heart later on. Usually the brain was discarded. It was discarded through the nose, but then after this, the body was left to dry, was covered with this special salt called natron, and will absorb any moisture. And it was left for around 40 days to even 70 days. After this complex process of mummification, the body was completely dry. It was stuffed the body again with water from the Nile and covered with oils and with linen as well. The linen was used to wrap the physical body and wrap all the components. And in some cases, some amulets were used during the wrapping process of the body. And one of the most common amulets was the heart scarab for protecting the heart, and it was placed in the middle of the chest of the person. But it's been found in many mummies, different objects such as necklace or important possessions that the individual has or had during the earthly life. Another important thing to remember about this process was the prayer. So there was a priest with the Anubis face, or an Anubis priest who used to make some prayers, because remember, the Anubis was the god who actually opened the doors of the death for the individual and take the soul of the individual to the judgment hall. So the prayers was very important. Finally, this was just only one part, because the individual needed to have a tomb, and the tomb, in most of them, they used to have possessions for them so they can take them to the afterlife. And an important concept here was the Book of the Dead. So the Book of the Dead was actually a book of different spells and with the instructions, so that the soul will know which way to follow during the afterlife of the after-death process. So it's according to ancient Egyptian, there were different gates. So there were around 12 gates, which were related to the 12 hours of night, and each hour it's regarded to one door that opened, and the individual needed to pass these doors and encounter different gods. But the most important was the judgment hall with Osiris.
Just at the first time, the mummification process can be very difficult thing, but I know that the organs that they put it off, they keep them in a pottery. Yes. what happened with them?
Yes, exactly. Well, it says that some of those organs, well, they were kept in different containers that represented the sons of Horus, which is another Egyptian god,
God.
and so they were considered also some sort of sacred. Yes, so the person who was during the mummification and was going through the death process needed to keep these organs next to them, yeah, in this special pottery with different spells and scripts as well, and with the heads of animals. So there was one with a jackal head animal, another with a human, another with an eagle, and so on. So these potteries were important for the individual to keep them safely within the tomb, so that it can be taken to the death, afterlife, or the next stage.
Okay, I was reading about the importance of heart in the ancient Egypt. Can you tell us more about that concept?
Yes, well, as I was telling you before, the heart was the only organ kept within the physical body, and the heart for the Egyptians was called the ib, or this is spelled IB, and it was called because this way because it was an important element of the soul. According to ancient Egyptians, the heart was the seat of a person's personality, spirit, and the most important part of the body. And that is the reason why it wasn't removed, and it was protected by the amulet of the heart scarab. So, to reach the eternal paradise of the field of reeds, one had to pass through the trial of Osiris. Osiris was the god lord of the underworld and just the judge of death in the Hall of Truth, also known as the Hall of the Two Truths. And this trial involved the weighing of the heart. That's what the heart was, an important element of the soul and an important organ of the person, because only by having your heart with you in this process, it was weighing with the feather of the truth of the goddess Ma'at. So you may say that this is a process of like a confession, and it is actually the individual needed to say the confession list of Ma'at, the 41 sins of Ma'at. So this confession list said all the good virtues and good things that individual needed to do in this earthly existence. So you needed to confess that you did really good deeds, that you had a good behavior, that you helped others, that you spoke with love, that you have always positive thoughts, that you always act with justice. So in this way, the soul of the person was pure, and this was the proof that could pass through this judgment ritual and go to the field of reeds, or this everlasting peace place where the soul was going to rest with other gods and goddesses. So this is the importance of the heart, because through the heart you will guarantee the passing of this judgment trial.
Okay, doctor. I know that in ancient Egypt, they had a cat concept, like key A concept. It can be,
Yes.
as we know in Occidental countries, the concept of soul that you were talking about.
Well, exactly. So, according to ancient Egyptians, a person's soul was thought to be immortal, an eternal being whose stay on earth was only one part of a much larger and grander journey. This soul was said to consist of different elements, and some of the elements of the soul was the cat or the jat, the physical body, the ka, which is the energetic body, the ba, which is some sort of the soul aspect of the body, and so on. There were others such as the ah, the sahu, the sehem, the ib, the ren. So all of these aspects were parts of one's earthly existence, and at that, the Akh appeared before Osiris in the Hall of Truth, and in the presence of the 42 judges to have one's heart waning. So for ancient Egyptians, they recognized that when the soul first awake in the afterlife, it will be disoriented and might not remember its life on earth. And this is normal. That's what they were following the Egyptian Book of the Dead. But it is important to acknowledge here that that element of the soul, the ka, was an important aspect of the individual on earth as well. And it was related as the personality. Yes, so it was said that the personality or the ka was created at the moment of one's birth, but the soul was an immortal entity inhabiting a mortal vessel. When that vessel fell and the person's body died, the soul went on to another plane of existence, which was what I was explaining. And if it was justified by the gods, it will live forever. So the soul was not only one's character. It was a composite being of different entities, of different elements, each of which had its own role to play in the journey of life and afterlife. The mortuary rituals, which were such an important aspect of Egyptian culture, were so carefully observed because each aspect of the soul had to be addressed in order for the person to continue on the way to eternity. The ka was one's double form or astral self and corresponds to what most people in present day consider as soul. This was the vital force. So the ka was the vital force, the vital energy that enabled a person to continue to receive offerings in the next world. The ka was created when you are birthed and also reflected the personality. So it was not only the personality, but the ka was also a guide, a protector, imbued with the spark of the divine. It was the ka which will absorb the power from the food offerings left in the tomb, and this will sustain it in the afterlife. All living things had a ka, from plants to animal and up to the gods, which was evident in that they were simply alive. So this is one of the most important concepts of the soul elements in ancient Egypt.
So if I understood, it can be a soul, but it has more. It has our personality, and when we born, we have this ka, and it makes our soul plus our personality. Is it correct?
Exactly. So imagine that your soul is divided into different elements, into different parts. And one tiny part of that soul is the ka. So the ka is just a tiny part of the whole spiritual being, which is the soul.
Okay. And can you tell us, or can you explain us more about this reborn concept and the justified soul, the judgment? Or we can talk about it later?
Well, we can talk about now. And as I was telling, when the body or when the soul or the spirit of the individual went into the afterlife, this person needed to follow some instruction, and that's what the Egyptian Book of the Dead was for. So the soul will meet right away after dying, would meet the god of Anubis, who would lead it from its final resting place to the Hall of Truth. Remember that the Hall of Truth or the Hall of Judgment was an important step that the soul needed to make in the afterlife. So right after dying, the process, which usually takes, it could take 1, 2, 3, or 4 days. During those days, there were many rituals, such as the rituals of the opening of the mouth, the opening of all the senses, were performed by a highest priest, and usually a highest priest of Anubis. And after opening all the senses of the individual, the soul was able to leave the physical body and then go to this process where his or her heart was waning against the feather of the truth, or ma'at. So
Doctor,
during this process, the soul will reside.
Doctor, excuse me, I have a question. This process, they made it before mummification? The open sense?
The process of the weaning of the heart, the opening of the sense was after the mummification. So after the mummification, the opening of all the senses, the eyes, the mouth, the ear, was performed right after that. So during the whole ritual, when they were taking the sarcophagus with the mummified body into the tomb, all the senses were open. Yes. So it is like nowadays when you go to a ceremony where you know, like a Catholic or a Christian, where they are burying the person. There was a priest saying prayers. So exactly or similar, there was an Anubis priest saying some prayers, and these prayers also were focused on reciting the Book of the Dead, because they were telling them to the soul where to go. Follow the light, go through these doors, and meet the other gods in the hall of judgment or the hall of truth. So every person living in this existence needed to go through that process after that. So if you have this in mind, most people in ancient Egypt were obliged to do good deeds in their lives. So they needed to be good in person, do good deeds, always have positive thoughts, always have an open heart, help others. So this was an important concept of keeping a life balanced and in peace. So that was the concept of the Ma'at. Ma'at was the goddess of balance and harmony. And according to ancient Egyptians, the Ma'at needed to be preserved in this life. And the soul needed to contribute for that order. And in the afterlife, that order was tested. So the god Osiris and another group of gods were the judges. And they were actually reviewing what the person did in this earthly existence. And if the person, most of the actions were good, the person or the individual was able to rest in peace in the field of rest. So this is an important concept of death, and I think ancient Egyptians had a very complex way of viewing things, but remember that this was developed through many centuries and even thousands of years.
Yes, it's very old. And before I have another questions, I want to remind of all of our audience that this broadcast is live, and you can follow us through www.ekoradio.com and through Facebook, our Facebook page, and YouTube. Dr. Gamal, if someone is in the judgment, how we can prepare for that moment before we are dead?
All right. So if we take that knowledge and that wisdom here in this existence, I think the best way to prepare ourselves for that day is to be good persons. We need to, whatever we do in our lives, whatever is our job, we always need to act with kindness, with wisdom, with compassion. Always be fair, and always do good deeds. Things that will help others. So any kind of, it's actually a good deed. And also, it's not about action, it's also about having positive thoughts. It's about contributing to this world. So that's the important thing that we are going to be judged in the afterlife. So if we compare it to, for example, Christian or Catholic traditions, when the soul dies, the soul is going to go to heaven, yes? And there is something called the redemption of the sins. So something happened similar in the weaning of the heart. But according to ancient Egyptians, they are very strict. Osiris and the other 42 gods and goddesses, they are very strict because they will judge you. They will say to you, you did this at your age of 13, or you had a bad behavior when you were 34. Everything is written in a book, and the so-called the green emerald tablets, or the so-called the Akashic records of each person. So each person has a book, and there was a God that read that book, and that God was thought. So it was says that this God was actually helping to check your life experiences and see if you were a good person or if you were not a good person. So whatever action you did in the past, it was written and it was in that book preserved, and all the gods and goddesses in the afterlife, and particularly Osiris, will see with details every aspect that you did. So my advice is, you need always to be good in person, good in thoughts, and do things that will help people to heal and also to help them. So that's the best way of achieving everlasting peace.
But we have to start for the inside of us, and then we can be kind with another people. It's in that way that it works.
Exactly. So here, something important, and as a doctor in my experience that I have realized is that many people is ill, mentally ill, and emotional ill because of traumas, because difficult situations that they go through their lives, and not only this life but different lives existences. So if the soul hasn't healed those aspects, the soul will suffer with pain in this life and will not enjoy life and will not do good deeds or good actions. So that's what I think it is important to heal that internal aspect of each person. And that is my mission. My mission is help people to heal within themselves and teach others to heal others. So if you know how to heal energetically and internally, emotionally, and spiritually another person, you are definitely doing something good for them, and you are also building something good for yourself.
Okay. If I help another people, I am constructing something good for me in some ways.
Exactly. You are creating balance within your emotion. You are building something that Hinduism and Buddhism call positive karma. And this is a
Yes.
concept that we may talk in a different transmission or a different program. But at the end, ancient Egyptians had that concept too. If you were having a positive life, if you were a good person, then everything will come to you in a good way. And the most important thing, at the end of your life, you will enjoy it with lots of peace and love. So whatever you do, you're going to get it in return. Yeah, that's the important thing.
But they were very restricted, so they had like
Yes.
special laws that we can know how we can do or what is not allowed to do or not.
Exactly. So they had something that it was called the 42 confession list of Ma'at. The list of Ma'at was a list of sins. So it is like
Okay.
in some Catholic traditions or Christian traditions, they have the so-called the how do you call that? That remember that God gave to people 10 different actions or things that they should and should not to do.
Uh-huh.
Egyptians had a similar version of that, but it was more complex because there were not 10, there were 42 around, 42.
42.
So in all of them, exactly, you knew what to do. So for example, one of them was always look after earth, love animals, treat others and treat animals with love. Think positively. So, you know, they were considered very important. Yes, so it is important to have that in mind because, whatever you do, it has to be with a good intention and even to yourself and towards others. So it is complex, but I feel like it will create balance. And that was the main purpose. The main purpose was that if I'm doing good things, other people is doing good things, we live happily and very in balance in this life. And this is something that we're not achieving today, what's happening with different countries, with different
Mm-hmm.
way of thinking, because there are different religions, different traditions. So there is conflict. Different countries, different cultures have different perspective of life, and that's why humanity is not accepting each other. They are not respecting the differences, and if you are not respecting others and you are not tolerating others and seeing others as a spiritual beings like you, then you are not acting positively.
And in Indian and Buddhist people, um, they have special rules about animals. Like they don't eat some kind of meat, and
Exactly.
they had something similar, or they
In
can.
Yes, well, in ancient Egypt, when there were big ceremonies and big rituals, they offer these animals before eating them. They offer them to the gods, or they offer to the eternity of to the higher creator of life. You know, so and that is something similar to what different and traditions in Native Americans or like in South Americas we have the Incas or the traditional Indian people here. They do the same before eating an animal. They offer it to earth. They offer it to the higher creation, to the higher creator, and then they can consume it. So you do that in your everyday life. So you are grateful for what you're eating, for what you're having, and at the same time, energetically, you are thanking the world and the existence for bringing that food to you. Yeah. So
Okay.
you could eat any sort of animal, meat, or plant as long as you respect the balance as well. So it's not about extinguishing all animals or all type of plants and doing some type of industrial agriculture, what we have today, which is like growing and growing things but with no respect to the land. So that is something that in ancient Egypt was not allowed. Whatever was cropped, whatever was taken from earth, there was a ritual of offering it first and then eating it. Yes, and because they knew that food, that animal that was given as a sacrifice had energy. It has its ka. Remember, we're talking about the
Yes,
ka,
yes.
and you were eating that ka as well. And in Indian traditions is the same. In Ayurvedic or Vedic traditions, they knew that that ka was also the prana or the vital energy. That's the vital force. The vital force is that energy that a being had inside. And when you were eating it, you were also consuming that energy. But remember that that energy comes from the higher creation. So that animal or that plant was only a bridge so that we can consume it. Can you understand that? You know what I mean?
Yes, yes, absolutely. So they were very um, upset if they can see our world nowadays, I think.
Exactly. So they were very conscious. That's the word. They were very conscious and aware. They had a higher conscious of life and existence, of respecting life, because that was part of the ma'at or the balance.
I think that all this knowledge that you have, Dr. Gamal, it should be spread for all over the world because we forgot, and it was many, many, many years ago. We come from there. So that's why this broadcast can be very, very useful and very
Thank
interesting.
you.
Yes, thank you so much. I have a final question. In that concept of cosmology, life force energy that we were talking about
Yes.
is a spiritual tool. In our modern society, how is this force nowadays? What do you think in
Well,
general?
that's a good question. Well, in modern times, there is still no scientific knowledge about what the ancient Egyptians or other civilizations named as universal energy or vital force energy. Ancient Egyptians knew it as Ka. Ancient Chinese civilizations knew it as Shi. In Japan, they call it as Ki. And in India, they name it Prana. So today we are kind of integrating now that knowledge back again. So when we do acupuncture, when we do Qigong or energy healing therapy such as Reiki or Egyptian Reiki, which is our main topic and which is something that we're going to explore in the next interview. Egyptians use this life force energy for healing, for rituals, for personal development, for spiritual growing. But today, the only concept we have, and it is a physical concept of energy produced by cells and the mitochondria and the production of ATP. So scientifically, it is what we can see is the only thing that we can prove. And energetically, if you are not vibrating higher or if you are not evolved enough, you are not able to see or feel this subtle energy, which we call Ka or Chi or vital force energy. So scientifically, it's difficult to prove because humanity or humankind nowadays do not have that knowledge and is not prepared or is preparing now. So now some few people are starting to see energy, to feel it. And particularly children now, they are more energetic and they can be more perceptive of things. So at the end, science such as metaphysics is introducing concepts such as the bioplasmic field or energy vortices, which are the so-called chakras, and that ancients knew long time ago. So very little, I think, in the medical field, we're trying to understand the importance of energy, vital force energy, in the healing of people. So it would be amazing if in the future, in a hospital, we were able to also treat the soul and the spirit as ancient Egyptians did in the past. And I think this is going to be our topic next week. We're going to talk about how were hospitals in ancient Egypt. So hospitals not only treated physical injuries, but they also treated the soul ailments. They also treated spiritual illness, and it was part of the healing. So could you imagine having that back again in our present life? So a hospital where the person could also be treated spiritually, emotionally, and energetically? That would be amazing because there wouldn't be any sort of sickness, because it says that when you have an emotional blockage from a long-term chronic problem spiritually, then create a physical illness. So if we can treat those areas as well, we are preventing physical illness to appear in the future.
So we can find like special pills to treat the soul, or how does it work?
Well, you may say that, yes, but energetically you can have those energetically or spiritual pills that you can give to a person. So for example, in one of my techniques of healing, I use codes, number codes, and number codes are like pills, so they have an intention. So when I download that code into a person, the person is being healed for that aspect. So there is a code for healing pain, which is the 911. And if I use that code number into a person, I am connecting the intention with the universal energy and bring it into a physical matter. So that is an important aspect of energy healing, that we can treat and we can heal many things. However, we can still use traditional treatments, so we can still do medical treatments. But I will go first with homeopathic or naturopathic treatments first. So the use of natural products, herbs, that will help definitely in the healing than, with the other things too.
So the next program can be amazing topic.
Yes, we're going to talk about Egyptian magic. We're going to talk about Egyptian healing, the priests, the priesthoods, and how they use healing for healing others. So it's going to be an interesting topic, and this is going to be the introduction of Egyptian Reiki.
So, Dr. Yamal, time flies here when something is very interesting. So, can you tell us more about this topic? Just to say goodbye to all audience.
Yes. Yes. So first of all, I want to thank everyone. I want to thanks to all my audience in Australia, in the US, in New Zealand, in Canada, in the UK. Very soon after this pandemic sort of finished, I'll be traveling and I'll be teaching all my techniques there. I will tell people that next week we're going to be talking about ancient Egyptian magic, healing, and we're also going to talk about the myths or the mythology of Osiris, Isis, and Horus, which is important, and I think we missed today. So next topic is going to be about that too: magic, healing, and that's it. And prepare some questions. So if anyone has some questions, I will ask the audience to please send us the questions. You can search me on Instagram and on YouTube, and the best way is hashtag Dr. Gamal Pies, hashtag Dr. Gamal Pies. Send me any questions, and I will be answering them through this broadcast next week. So thank you so much, ekoradio. Thank you, Anna. And thank you, Cesar, as well, who is on the background. And a special thanks to everyone. So thank you.
Thank you to you, Dr. Gamal. And see you next week in this special broadcast and in ekoradio. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Otra forma de hacer radio. Síguenos en nuestras redes sociales, en Twitter e Instagram como @ecoradios y en Facebook como Ekoradio. Ekoradio, otra forma de hacer radio. El mundo entero hace eco en ekoradio.com. Otra forma de hacer radio. ekoradio.com amplía sus fronteras digitales. Por eso te invitamos a que te suscribas a nuestro canal de YouTube Ekoradio, en donde encontrarás los mejores programas, el mejor contenido y podrás escuchar nuestra señal online www.ekoradio.com, la vitrina del talento latino. Estás escuchando ekoradio.com, la vitrina del talento latino. ekoradio.com, otra forma de hacer radio. Una emisora diferente, con contenido especializado. Sigue toda nuestra programación en www.ekoradio.com.
Deme un momento y ya estoy con ustedes.
ekoradio.com, otra forma de hacer radio. Síguenos en nuestras redes sociales, en Twitter e Instagram como @ecoradios y en Facebook como Ekoradio. Ekoradio, otra forma de hacer radio.
Hola a todos los ecoyentes de Ekoradio. Somos la cuadrilla murguera bogotana, la primera murga de estilo uruguayo de Colombia. Hace más de 6 años nos dedicamos a mixturar la cuadrilla riosuceña del Carnaval de Río Sucio Caldas con la murga de estilo uruguayo. La cuadrilla murguera bogotana en este 2020 está conformada por Cristian Fernández Wilches, Ivonne Garzón y Estefanía Lambuley en la batería, en la dirección general Selene Higuera, y en el coro, dividido por cuerdas, están Paul Pacheco, Nicolás Soto, Juan Nicolás González, Diego Zanabria, Vladimir Arciniegas y Sergio Treviño en la cuerda masculina. En la cuerda de sobreprimas cantan Catalina Sánchez, Estefanía Lozano, Emiliana Mejía, Lina Gabriela Ramírez y Rocío Leguizamón. Finalmente, en la cuerda de primas, Sonia Esperanza Gaitán, Natalia Merlano, Angélica Murcia y Sofía Libertad Sánchez.